G'day friends. G'day friends, I'm Anthony and I'm an alcoholic. I will now need a preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Welcome to the Way Out meeting on a Friday night. It's such a fantastic view from this angle to see so many faces here tonight. Do we have any newcomers with us tonight? Not to embarrass you, just to get to know you better. Is there any newcomers in the room? Are there any visitors from overseas or interstate? Any birthdays?
Yeah, I'm John, an alcoholic, and I celebrate the 3 this week.
Right, John. As a respect to other members, can we please ensure that all mobile phones are turned off or on silent? Thank you. Just a couple of notices before we get started. Twin Towns Group, the CWA Hall in Griffith Street, Coolangatta on Thursdays at 12:30 is adopting a new format. It is now a Steps ID meeting. All members are welcome. Seeking members to carry the AA message to the detox facility at Eagle Heights every second Thursday night. Please contact Richard or Megs, and there's some phone numbers here for that. The Gold Coast District Public Information meets on the 4th Tuesday of each month at 6 p.m, Level 1 Community Centre, Lawson Street. Anyone interested in contributing to public information and service work are encouraged to come along to find out more. And there's some numbers here. Ivan's one of them, I think. Put your hand up, Ivan. Thank you. Southern Gold Coast District meets at 5 to 6 p.m. on Thursday the 15th of November at Al-Anon Community Centre. The 2020 Gold Coast Rally Committee is looking for a member for catering officer. The committee meets every second Tuesday of the month in the meeting room F1 Level 1 Southport Community Centre. Okay, I've got some upcoming events. As Bill Caesar are having a 32nd birthday on Tuesday the 8th of October, next Tuesday, at 6 p.m, barbecue, meeting at 7 p.m. There's a AA Hungy. If I've said that wrong, I apologise. That is on Sunday the 13th of October at 466 Mountain Road, Tomerman. There's the update. Okay. Toowoomba Rally is on October 11th to the 13th. Step up, there's some information on that if you're interested. There's a Barefoot Bowls coming up at Broadbeach Waters on Sunday, October the 20th. Please come and join us for Barefoot Bowls, sausage sizzle. Trivia night. There's a trivia night, CSO fundraiser, Saturday, November the 2nd at 7 p.m. at the Cumera Meeting Hall, $10 per person. Sausage sizzle, drinks, gold coin donation. And the men's retreat. Do we have anyone here from the men's retreat that would like to speak about the men's retreat coming up? Well, it's coming up on... There's the date. There's a men's retreat coming up. If anyone wants any information about that, please come and see me after the meeting. We will now practice the 7th tradition, which states we are fully self-supporting, and these group supports a 60-30-10 plan. As an option of the group has added a tap and go. If that suits you, we do a tap and go for Tradition 7 here as well. You can come and see us after the meeting. just reading notices and giving letters.
Very well, thank you. Hello.
How are you?
Could you pass me that flask back?
That's
Otherwise
yours?
I'm going to leave it.
That's yours?
There we go.
I was wondering why it was there. Thanks, mate. Thank you. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous is the foundation of that path. The first 164 pages of our literature outlines precisely how our founders have recovered from a seamlessly hopeless state of mind and body, giving us clear-cut direction and a design for living sober. From one alcoholic to another, we carry this message. Like those who came before us, we simply pass it on. Through love and service, we stay sober one day at a time by giving away freely what was freely given to us, and by the grace of God as we understand Him. As a group, can we please take a moment's silence to invite God in and to reflect on why we are here? Each week we ask a sober alcoholic who lives in the solution of recovery, who is getting results from this book, to share his experience, strength and hope as discovered by them within the chapters of Alcoholics Anonymous. Tonight's speaker is Tim, who will be speaking for approximately an hour on step 10 and 11.
Thanks, my name's Tim. My name's Tim and I'm an alcoholic. I don't know how much has changed since I was drinking, but I would always like to have 2 drinks lined up, and that's exactly what I have this evening. So I know I'm in a room of people who understand me. I've got a friend called Tom who does some travelling for AA. He speaks in different places. And I sent him just this little text a couple of days ago saying, I'm in a place called Surfer's Paradise. And he texted back immediately, I'm floating down the Mekong River in the direction of Cambodia, still sober. Now, Tom has been sober since 1976, but he doesn't get bored of discovering that he's still sober. And you need to know, I haven't graduated beyond sober. And it's not a banal point. I have done service in AA at a treatment centre. It's not called a treatment centre, it's called a clinic. And because it's called a clinic, they pay a lot more to be in there than they would if it were just a treatment centre. And because it's a clinic, the little AA group that we would take in there was optional. Because there's Indian head massage, all sorts of wonderful things, which I'm sure are very helpful. No, seriously, I mean, these people, they get a lot out of this. But they come into the AA meeting, we present AA to them. And some people have never been to a meeting before. Some people have never heard of AA before. but about 2/3 of them are people who were sober 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 years and ended up back in the drink and back in some other substances. And you can't tell them anything. And I don't want to be on the other side of that table one day. I don't want to be someone who is drunk and can't get sober because they know everything. So I think the Jesuits say that if they get given someone at the age of 7, they've got him for life. And AA is a bit like that with me. It got me when I was 21. I'm 48 now. I got sober when I was 21. And apart from the fact I was drunk when I got here, I was incompetent in every area of my life. I did not know how to live. I did not know how to function. I couldn't work. I couldn't hold a civil conversation with people. I needed to be taught everything from scratch. And I need to remember that everything I know, I have, has been given to me by the higher power through other people in AA. And I will only remember it if I spend my life giving it away. And there's a curious balance here. My number one priority in my life is to keep AA at the centre of my life. And then what does it say as soon as I'm in AA on page 17? A much more important demonstration of our principles lies in our respective homes, occupations and affairs. So I've got lots of number one priorities in my life. I've got my 90-year-old mother who I spend a lot of time looking after. I have a home, I have a career. Well, I have what people call a career. People ask me to do things and I do them. That's how I treat my job. I don't conceive of myself having a career, but people say I've got a career. But the most important thing is my home group. There are people I've sponsored there and continue to sponsor, a lot of friends. There are sponsees of sponsees, there are sponsees of sponsees of sponsees, there are a lot of people there. And I hear people who are 1 or 2 years sober saying things, and I think, I'm not doing that, I need to be doing that, I've forgotten. I get complacent incredibly quickly. I get complacent incredibly easily, and it's dangerous. And if I don't have a room of people that I see once a week, I won't stick around. Other things will start to become more important, and I know because there have been times in AA that other things started to become more important or troublesome. And I started to develop, I don't know if any of you have ever had problems other than alcohol. I mean, not just substances. I mean, I've been clean and sober for a long time, but boy, is there a lot you can get up to in the world which will take the edge off and distract you from what's important. And those started to become the priority. And when I was 10 or 11 years sober, to my shame, I would go to a big book group, listen politely to everyone sharing, and then share my wisdom, always at the end of the meeting, so that I would have the last word. And suggest in a subtle, not so subtle way, well, it's all very well, but real life is more complicated than this. And there are areas that the big book can't reach. There are areas that the AA program can't reach. And I think it was about 4 years later I had to eat my words. I looked everywhere for solutions outside AA. And some things helped. They didn't release me but they brought me to a point where I could hear the AA message at last. And when I was about 15 years sober, I mean, I was given a very strong basis back in 1993. Good old-fashioned AA. I did a step 4. I did a step... I wouldn't give you tuppence for the step 4 that I did, but it was sincere, and I was following the instructions of my sponsor, and I got a release out of it. The technicians of AA would turn their nose up at it, but it was sincere, and I followed my sponsor's instructions, and I got a release out of it. And I sponsored some people over the first few years. But at 15 years sober, I was having experiences like going to visit a member of my family and having a panic attack on the way back to the train station after the visit and not knowing why. And that was one of a dozen examples. Compulsive behaviour in all sorts of different areas. My relationship with food is not straightforward. My relationship with sex, my relationship with romantic intrigue, these are not straightforward either. And if you're looking hard enough for long enough, eventually you'll find the solution, in my experience. And with any luck, you won't drink before you find it. And I didn't drink before I found it. But that was luck, not judgment. I'll tell you that. And I was at a jumping off point at 15 years. I wasn't suicidal, but the choice I had was either to carry on accepting I was going to be emotionally crippled in all sorts of fundamental ways. My life was 1,000 times better than it was when I got sober. But there were these emotional sinkholes I would fall into. The jumping off point was, I'm either going to have to muddle through for the rest of my life as best as I can, or I'm going to have to look for a solution within AA. And I listened to a bunch of tapes. There's a long story, but the short version is this. The idea was presented to me that I should go through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, turning every statement into a question and asking myself if I identified with it. And then when I got to page 63, it was offering me a course of action, and I could either throw the book away or take up the course of action. And then I was to do every single action completely. And I was sceptical because I'd done about 95% of what was in there. But there was a 5% I hadn't done. And you'd think I would have got 95% of the solution. But I hadn't. I'd got 0% of the solution. But now, it wouldn't have looked like I'd got 0% of the solution. The first line in step 10 is that we've entered the world of the Spirit. I had not entered the world of the Spirit. I was 100% still in the material world, and I'd used AA extremely effectively to operate competently in the world in order that the world deliver me the externals, the accoutrements, all of the things which society had told me since the age of dot that were supposed to make me happy. And I was able to do this. So I had a career, I had a house, I had a mortgage, I had a pension, I had a partner. I had the external life. And on one level it was ashes in my mouth. But I had trouble facing that. That there was a power inside me which wanted to come out, which couldn't. And it was chloroformed by this moral system that I had in my life, which I'd learnt in AA. And it was anaesthetised by work. I was very, very busy in AA and outside AA. And I was reined in by structure. But there was something, it was like a wild animal inside me that knew there was something more, and it wanted to find it. And it was that, and I knew that wild animal was going to kill me if it didn't find a way out and find its way back home. And so, as I say, I wanted to go through the book word for word. And I had tapes of people from America who by then were dead. I had no idea. They sounded pretty alive to me. Our sponsorship is important, but the key thing here is the message on what to do was carried to me by tapes of dead people and a book. I didn't have a sponsor to help me interpret this stuff because there was literally no one around me in any of the groups I knew who was doing what was described by these people on these tapes. So I had no choice. It's not like there was a big book group around where I could go to where there were loads of old-timers. There were some big book groups in London, but not as you would recognise. Now, you can miss one word in those 164 pages and miss the whole thing. Does anyone know what the word is? Any guesses? It's on page 59. Eight, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. The unwillingness without action is fantasy. So if they haven't been made, I know there are people you can't find and there are shadowy faces from the underpass that, there are just, this is always subject to physically being able to, pin the bugger down. But willingness is demonstrated by my action. And the first time round in AA, I wheedled out of a bunch of amends, specifically all of my exes, on the basis that it would do them more harm. I mean, no one explained... Now, you laugh, but it's not hard to find sponsors who will co-sign that because they haven't made amends to their... The script always runs, you don't want to waltz back into people's lives. They may be in a relationship with someone else. You don't know what you... But it's not thought through. I don't think I've never harmed anyone by making a sincere apology. I've literally never heard anyone say, I can't believe of the nerve of that person is, giving me a humble, sincere apology. And then, there are circumstances in which, there are three circumstances in which I can do harm in an amend. I don't want to dob anyone else in. I don't want to reveal new information which is going to shock or upset. And there is the question of is this going to make me more useful to society, or is revealing this going to make me less useful to society? Those are the three principles I was given. But none of these applied in my case. So there was all of the exes, and there was a whole load of petty thefts from my childhood. My attitude to physical property is if it was closer to me than it was to you, it belonged to me. It's known as the law of proximity. If you left the room, suddenly it started to belong to me. There were all sorts of little things which dated right back to my childhood. There were moments of cruelty in my childhood, which might have been funny on one level, but were cruel on another. There were a lot of noses I'd put out of joint in AA over the previous 15 years. And to cut a long story short, I made 72 amends as best I could in 9 days. And the top of my head blew off, and I was more... that beast that wanted to find freedom found freedom, and it's taken 11 years since then to bring that beast under control, as it needed to be tamed. And that's when I needed very strong sponsorship. And I got you have to get a Texan, don't you? If you, I mean, here you've got strong sponsors here. If you're British, either an Australian or a Texan. And I found someone who had caused a lot of trouble in AA himself, and knew how to put that right, who'd put more people off AA by being militant about how this program works than he'd saved. And so I've had to spend the last 10, 11 years learning how to carry the message in a way which is not going to hurt anyone. And I don't always succeed, but I'm better than I was. So on step 10 it says we've entered the world of the Spirit. And for me, what that means, the first thing I noticed, the day I completed the last amend, I went to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it struck me for the first time. I was with other human beings who were suffering. And it suddenly occurred to me why I'd felt so different and separate my whole life. There was a layer of guilt inside me which was separating me from other people. Now, I believe it actually predated all of the things that I had to make amends for, because it was there from as young as I could remember. Making those amends allowed me to realise that guilt was nothing to do with the things that I'd done. It was far deeper. But it opened me up to my own humanity, and it opened me up to yours. And I haven't felt alone since then. And a blanket came off my life. And I'd spent a lot of my life thinking that I had low self-worth, thinking that I had depression. And I did. Clinically, I did. If you measured me against a clinical scale, I was depressed. I mean, a sponsor when I was a year sober said, well, the reason you're depressed is probably because your life is depressing. But, you know. But I matched the clinical symptoms of depression. I had panic attacks. I had multiple diagnosable syndromes. But in my case, they had physical effects. They changed the way my brain worked. But in my case, when the work was done, I connected to you. That was the problem. I did not know how to connect to other human beings. And as a member of my home group who's sober around 35 years, and he's been in the UK for a few years, but before that he lived in Florida and would have lunch every day with an old-timer, a very old-timer in AA who died a couple of years ago, maybe less, who said that your only two problems in life with other people are you haven't forgiven them or you haven't made amends to them. And what I was taught to do by a book and some dead people was to forgive everyone for everything on the basis that anything anyone has done, they haven't done to you because your spirit can't be harmed. They've done it in your presence. There's an episode of Friends where the Jennifer Aniston character is teaching the Matt LeBlanc character, not breaking their anonymity here, how to sail. And she was a good sailor, he was a terrible sailor, he was messing everything up. And she starts to yell at him. And he says, stop yelling at me. And she says, I'm not yelling at you, I'm yelling near you. Everything that anyone had ever done to me was done in my presence. Even if they thought they were doing it to me, I am not my physical body, I am not my material circumstances. They did it to those things. Those things can be damaged. but I can't. That was the fundamental basis for my forgiveness, is that I cannot be harmed. So what I thought you did to me did not happen. The physical events did, but it was my narrative about them which hurt me and which repeated day after day, changing every single time I repeated it, until the story I was telling myself bore no resemblance to the original event. And forgiveness and amends are linked, because it was only by going back to the people that had treated me badly, who I had retaliated against, and by treated badly, I mean the stuff that happened to me as a child that should not happen to children, let's leave it at that, where I retaliated very cruelly and very publicly and in an unwarranted, inappropriate way. And I made amends for that behaviour. And I heard the other side of these stories, and I realised that my story bore very little resemblance to reality. And that's when most of those resentments got let go of, was in the amends process. And that is what enabled me to enter the realm of the Spirit. If I've got anything against anyone, I've got something against everyone. Because whatever I'm seeing in you is a projection of what I'm denying in me. So I'm blocking myself off from you and from the connection up to the higher power, down back to you again. And I only learned that by forgiving everyone, by making those last amends. And the forgiveness is an ongoing process. The amends are an ongoing process. The formal amends are done, but there is follow-up, and there is a constant adjustment of behaviour, which is what steps 10 and 11 are largely about. By the way, this entering the world of the Spirit, I got the very strong sense that there is nothing more to be frightened of, because I'm not going to die. Whatever dies, which will die, is not me. And that takes a lot of pressure off, because you now have forever. It changed everything. One footnote on 10 and 11. I do 10 and 11 out of the big book. And to me that's incredibly important to know that, because what people call different steps varies on depending on whether you're doing it out of the big book or the 12 and 12. So the 12 and 12 talks about the spot check inventory in the moment in step 10, and the nightly tallying of debits and credits on the balance sheet of your day. And then it talks about the periodic semi-annual or annual house cleaning. And I was brought up in old school AA originally, where no one used the big book, everyone used the 12 and 12, all the step meetings were 12 and 12 meetings, so my understanding of step 10 was, at the end of the day, you write a mini step 4 on all the stuff that has gone on during the day. I'm not going to comment on the validity of that process, because it's outside the scope of what the big book suggests. 2 points. If anything I say helps you, it's wonderful. And if it doesn't, then neither of us should worry about it. There'll be someone else next week. Go and listen to them. And there's nothing to argue about here. What I do, the way I do AA is not the right way, but it is the way I do it. That's it. It's not right or wrong. I do it a certain way, I get certain results. End of. If you do it differently and it's working, hooray! If it's not working, that's a different question. But in thinking that step 10 was, people talk about, I'm doing my step 10s, with a pen and a piece of paper. There's a terrible danger of missing what step 10 is in the big book. And a lot of it's blurb, which is interesting blurb and informative blurb, but it's blurb. The instructions are very sparse here. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment and fear. I spent my whole life, up until I started doing that, as the hero of my dream of what my life was. not realising that I was dreaming, not realising that it talks in step 3 about, in this drama of life, boy was it a drama. I didn't realise that it was a set of scripts I was acting out. Just the fact of standing outside myself and watching what's going on. You know, when you're on the phone to a sponsee and they are pressing your buttons and you're starting to get tense and your throat is starting to tighten, to stand on the outside of that and watch it happening and thinking, oh my God, I'm causing my own reaction to this. They are not look at what I'm doing here. Look at this tension I'm building up in my physical body in response to a human being that is asking for help and is having a bad day. Starting to watch it from the outside, that alone, if that's all I ever did for the rest of my time in AA, I would learn 99% of what I need to know. But the danger is falling asleep and getting back and thinking that there is nothing but what is going on the stage of my life. Not realising that I'm an actor that is being placed on the earth to play a set of roles where I'm not supposed to be making up the script as I'm going along. I'm supposed to be listening to the higher power, saying, what do you want me to say next? Where do you want me to go next? Who do you want me to speak to next? What's next? What's next? What's next? And in continuing to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, what I liken it to is the steering wheel of the car. That these are like the rumble strips on the side of the road. I've got to listen out for this emotional disturbance and just adjust the steering wheel back. And when I'm off balance during the day, for me, this is not a time to analyse it. I've already established in step 4, and this is really bad news, I've established in step 4 that there is never any justifiable resentment and there is never any justifiable fear. I mean, I'm sorry, was that news? I'm sure I should have warned you that this was coming. So when I get to step 10, I don't need to reanalyze why resentment is never justified and why fear is never justified. Like, this example does not need to be worked through in step 10. It might need to be worked through in another way. But in the middle of the day, seriously, I'm going to reanalyze whether I've actually found a resentment which might be justifiable. Is that the exercise I'm going to engage in? If I think that the resentment might be justifiable, if I think the fear might be justifiable, I've missed the whole deal so far. I've missed it. And just to recap why resentment is never justifiable and why fear is never justifiable. Resentment is never justifiable because the reason I get resentful is because I haven't got my own way. And it's already told me a few pages before step 4 that I'm going to paraphrase here, the actual line is on 61. If you get your own way, you know you won't be happy. I mean, you look at Western society now, how if you looked at what people's top 100 problems were 500 years ago, every single one of those problems is substantially solved, and you're in a society where most people are grumpy most of the time. Getting your own way does not work because there will always be something else. Because my ego's system to get me to stay in the material world and stick with it as my guide is to help me, it wants me to not realise there is a reality beyond it. The great reality, as it calls it in the big book. And the way it does that, it makes me dissatisfied here, thinking that if only you would change a tiny little bit, we'll be all right. And my focus, under the guidance of my ego, is to make lists of things in the world that need to be changed for me to be okay, and then to use the tools of the program to bring about that change. Whether it's through behaving well, or setting boundaries, or self-care, or I mean, FYI, I do set boundaries and I do look after myself, but still, it's not under the illusion that if I get the formula right, there'll be a pop and I'll feel fine. That's not what it's about. To do God's will, I need boundaries and I need to look after myself. It's not because that will make me happy. So, the reason why no resentment is justifiable is I'm not unhappy because of you. I'm unhappy because I'm listening to my ego, which has placed me in a position of separation from God and dissatisfaction with the world. And rather than accepting my guilt for having done that, it sees the guilt in you. So the whole thing is a red herring. If it wasn't, why am I resentful about different things on different days? Why am I fine with the traffic on one day and not fine with the traffic on the other? How I am with the traffic is a reflection of how I am with my higher power, which is how I am with the people I love in my life, and whether I'm holding anything against them. It's not about the resentment. It's not about the so-called subject matter of the resentment. And fear is just a resentment projected into the future with a whole dollop of uncertainty added to it. And also, the other reason why resentment, I don't believe, is justified, there are three basic reasons. The first one is that it's futile, and this is all on top of 67. It's futile in that me being angry does not bring about the change that I want to bring about anyway. Secondly, it's fatal. It further cuts me off from the higher power, and I will start acting out in other unattractive ways, and then I will drink again. And thirdly, it's really embarrassing to have my emotions controlled by someone else's so-called bad behaviour. Seriously, I'm picking the most dysfunctional people and saying, why don't you be in charge of my emotions today? How humiliating. My other half is not in... I've been with someone for 15 years. We're married. He's not in AA. Doesn't need to be in AA. And I said to him, how do you deal? He's in a very senior position at work, so lots of people are angry with him. And I said to him, how do you deal with other people being resentful with you? And he said, well, first of all, I'm embarrassed for them because it's so childish. And secondly, they need to get over it because it gets in the way. And I've spent too much time in AA indulging my own resentment and indulging other people's because I get sidetracked by the pain. And fear, let's talk about fear. It says, why do we have these fears? Isn't it because 68? Isn't it because self-reliance failed us? I have two voices I can listen to. The voice of the ego or the voice for God. One or the other. You get to pick. There is no line of communication between the two. The ego is vaguely aware that there is some kind of threat over there with the higher power, but it doesn't know how it operates. And if God is good, God did not create my ego. I did. So God has no awareness of my delusions. God is waiting for me to come back when I'm willing to open my eyes again. So the sun does not disappear if I put a paper bag over my head. And what I see on the inside of the paper bag will not be informative about reality. So why am I constantly analysing it? Which is why all of that is to explain why. When these crop up, selfishness, dishonesty, resentment and fear, we ask God at once to remove them. There is nothing in between those two about analysis. Or that terrible word, processing. And I don't need to learn to live with these things, or to manage these things, or to cope with these things. They need to be gone. But God will do for me what I can't do for myself. But the corollary of that, God won't do for me what I can do for myself. And the thing that I must do for myself is to make the choice against my ego's narrative about the world, about me, about everything. And say no to my ego's no to God. God cannot do that for me. Because my mind is too powerful. Our minds, I believe, are too powerful. I mean, my mind is powerful to have created all the nonsense it created. And you see the power of people who are under the thrall of the ego in the world. It's a very powerful thing. The mind is very powerful. So God isn't going to yank me out of that. I need to make the choice by saying, I'm wrong. I'm wrong about everything. If I keep one part of the ego system, I'm keeping the whole thing. There is no level on which I can be attached to my material reality, so-called reality. But I still got to operate here, because what I've been taught in AA is there's the point of my life is not what I'm doing here. The point of my life is what happens between me and you at the level of spirit. People have woken me up. People keep me awake. And my job is to extend that awareness of a reality beyond the material to other people in AA. And what has this got to do with alcohol? Well, if you... My brother was an alcoholic who committed suicide when he was 28, having left AA. I do not want to end up like him. I do not want to do to all the people I love in my life. And the only solution to alcoholism I've been given to understand is to have a spiritual awakening. That's what it's got to do with alcohol. And it's a bit of a radical solution. Well, I'm sorry about that, but I didn't write the book. You'll have to write to the authors and complain to them. So this line is the most important line. I can practice this all day, every day. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately and make amends quickly if we've harmed anyone. Sometimes I need to be yanked back to reality. And so the way I practice that line, 99 times out of 100, you adjust the steering wheel. Occasionally, I need to, as it were, stop at the nearest service station and phone my best friend in AA and say, this is the situation that's going on. I'm disturbed. Therefore, my perception is entirely wrong, but I can't see it. Can you help me with that? And I'm going to choose to believe your perception of the situation and not mine. I've already made the decision that you're right and I'm wrong before I call. I'm not going to call still believing what I believe. But if you can present a good enough argument, maybe I'll change my mind, and I'm going to argue before I change my mind. That's not going to work. This is the same policy decision. The policy decision is to say no to the ego because I don't like the results that listening to my ego for, 4 or 5 decades has produced. So I'm going to close the door on that and listen to my higher power. How do I connect with another alcoholic? And my higher power speaks through my best friend who is not emotionally involved in the situation and doesn't care if what he says upsets me. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. That happens in two ways. Either if I'm idle, I need to find something useful to do. There are plenty of people suffering in the world. There are plenty of meetings to go to. There are plenty of people to call. Find them. They'll appreciate it or not, but I'll get out of self. But the other point, sometimes I'm at work. Sometimes I'm with my mother. Sometimes I'm doing, whatever has been given to me by my higher power at the beginning of the day as the menu of these are the things you're going to be doing today. Turning my thoughts resolutely to how I can help other people is bringing myself back into the present, to the situation, saying, God, work through me in this situation right now so that I can make this moment better for the people around me. If I'm doing a piece of work, to do the piece of work to my absolute best, the best of my ability. Because when I'm in resentment, selfishness, dishonesty and fear, I'm not present. I'm not present in the task that has been given to me. I've created a fantasy land. I was in a meeting once and I heard a woman say, I'm in the middle of a divorce. I looked for the divorce. It wasn't under her chair. It wasn't to the left. Where's the divorce? And I've gone through a lot since I've been. If you stay sober, you'll go through a lot. But in any given moment, when my father was dying of lung cancer, when I was having nervous breakdowns, when I had liver problems when I was 8 years sober, when my mother was in hospital earlier this year, she's 90, and we had no idea what was going on, when my best friend was dying, all of these things, at any given moment during the process, I could be present, have my higher power with me, and be okay. Whatever was happening, the moment I was told my father died, I prayed, and I wasn't cheerful about it, but I was okay, I was at peace. When I had these liver problems when I was 7 years sober, I didn't know if I was going to die, but I was at peace because I was shown how to be at peace in Alcoholics Anonymous. We have ceased fighting anything or anyone. I turn promises into instructions in AA. The world is not in the state it is in because there aren't enough people fighting. So it doesn't need me. Maybe it needs something else. Maybe it needs love and tolerance being the code. So it's not just for my comfort, it's about effectiveness. And my primary talent is being, as what's his name? Chuck C said, a babbling, tongue-chewing alcoholic who's been given something that he didn't ask for, which is sobriety. That's the primary talent, is to practice Tradition 5 in my life, to have AA at the centre and have the glow that arises from that extend into every part of my life. There is another instruction on 85. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. My family are tricky, to say the least. A lot of them are not very well, and as they say, my head can go when I'm with them. I can start to feel separate. I can start to feel resentful. Most of all, I can start to feel despairing that people are just not going to get better. And they may not. And I've got to bring myself back into the moment and reconnect with the higher power. And I have these lines memorized so I don't need to run to the phone if my head goes. So that I don't need to run to the book. So I don't need to go to my phone and start fiddling around. I can have these lines running as prayers to bring me back present. Step 11 talks about prayer and meditation, and it says it's going to give us some valuable suggestions. And it's so important to recognise, I believe, that when they wrote the word meditation in 1939, they understood meditation the way they understood meditation, and not to tight-lace the writers of this book into today's conceptual corsets and say, well, because meditation means this today, we're going to take the current interpretation and project it back into what they were writing in 1939. It's exactly the same stuff as about people look at the sexism, as they put it, of some of the later chapters. And it's a completely different world, a completely different ideology. I'm sure there are many things about contemporary society that 1939 America would think is immoral, that we're getting wrong, that things have got worse in some ways, not better. So we're on no moral high ground there. So I've got to read the book as it was intended in the context. And I've got to trust when they say they're going to give me valuable ideas about meditation, they meant it. Now, do I do fancy, mindfulness stuff? I do, but... I think past 25 years you get two types of alcoholics. You get cigar-smoking, beef-eating alcoholics, and you get yoga practicing, meditating, Eastern meditating, vegan ones. I'm the second category. I'm not quite vegan. My friends think it's going to be about 6 months before I'm finally there. But that comes under line 87, where it says, be quick to see where religious people are right, and you get to pick which ones you think are right. But it's a footnote. It's not the body of step 11. The body of step 11 is having God as the boss, me as the employee, me saying to God in the morning, first thing, please direct my thinking. Why do I need to say that? Because my thinking is already going off in the wrong direction. I do not know where it's been at night. When I was drinking, I could go to bed having drunk a bottle of gin, all neat and tidy, with the bottle of water placed by the bed, the half loaf of bread, in the hope that by the morning I would have drunk some of the water, eaten some of the bread, and I can get up. And some days it was fine, the water was gone, some of the bread was gone, I could just about cope. But there were other days I woke up and the room was covered in mud and there was a kebab in the bed. And yet I had gone to bed neat and tidy the night before. So my mind is like that. I can go to bed neat and tidy and wake up monstrous. So the first idea is, God, please direct my thinking, because it needs directing. And the straitjacket gets put on of divorce my thinking from self-pity, self-seeking and dishonest motives. And I need to get back on the straight and narrow. And I heard someone say about 10 years ago, I can't do meditation because I get restless leg syndrome. Now, the meditation that it's suggesting is we consider the plans for the day. Now, it's not very sophisticated, is it? But literally, all I have to do, I can be like a cell of the body that wants to have an opinion on what the brain is doing. I'm just one cell of the body of humanity, and I need to do the job of that cell of the body. And so when can that work get done? It can get done today. What does doing God's will consist of? It consists of doing the tasks of today. Because I don't know what's God's will. Turn up at work. Work when you're at work. Stay off Facebook, stay off the internet, don't steal things, don't spend more than you earn, look after elderly relatives, be kind to people who are suffering. It's not rocket science. Seriously, 1 in 1,000 actual decisions need serious consultation and discussion. But almost everything is plain to a 12-year-old. It's not a mystery. But I do need to, but I will miss all of the things that need to be done because I'm thinking about property and prestige and power and pleasure. The 4 P's of the ego, the goals that my ego wants me to seek but never quite find. The worst thing for my ego is for me to get those things, because then I might discover they don't work. So the point of me considering the plans for the day is to remember all of the people that I need to be there for. And I'm going to finish in the next 60 seconds. As I can tell the little card's moving. But there are some very plain ideas which are incredibly helpful in step 11. Asking to be free of self-will. Reminding myself many times a day, I am no longer running the show. God, thy will be done. Show me the right thought or action. And so my step 11 is incredibly simple. I do some fancy footwork stuff as an added extra. But the meat and potatoes of it is I turn up to the boss in the morning. What do you want me to do? What spirit do you want me to do in? I take the review from yesterday, pick one corrective measure. Seriously, once you've got that down, go on to the next one. I've been working on being kind and polite to people for about 5 years. I'm nowhere near nailing it, so we're going to let it. But I turn up for work. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do today? I keep the steering wheel, keep the car going down the beam of God's will. And at the end of the day, what went wrong, what needs to be done tomorrow? It's no fancier than that. And at 15 seconds over, I'm going to stop. Thanks for listening.
That brings us to the end of the meeting, and thank you again, Tim, for being our guest speaker. This is the first Tuesday of the month, so this group will be having a group conscience tonight. Just for all the members. The last Friday of the month, this group invites everyone to join them for dinner at I Am Thai on West Burleigh Road, next to the Shell service station. If you would like to make the way out your home group, please see one of the group members after the meeting. Could all group members please raise their hand? If you have been through the Big Book and are available to help others in sponsorship, please raise your hand. We also have literature for sale and information over to the side. Just a reminder that we have an option of tap and go for an electronic payment available. This group invites everyone for stay for fellowship after the meeting. Thank you for being here. Can we just, before we do the serenity prayer, sing happy birthday to the birthday boy? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear John. Happy birthday to you. Can we please close with the serenity prayer? Trace, come and hold my hand.
So, would you please help me close in the traditional way? God, grant me serenity to accept the things I cannot change,